the story about Papa, niece, and the deer. Well, the family house that we all used to live together in is kind of near a park where there's a lot of animals. And I've talked about this before, I think, where one time I would be going to school in the morning and it'll be really dark and I feel a presence in the front yard and I would just look and I'll make eye contact with a family of deer and then I just proceeded to walk away. And so when we were together for dinner, Papa Nis was telling us a story about the time Mama Nis and Papa Nis also had an encounter with a family of deer. They have like the doorbell with the motion sensor and they record stuff. They're like, oh yeah, we got a notification. There's like a whole bunch of deer. And so apparently the deer brought its children. Papa Nis was like, it looked kind of like a week or so old. I was like, that's pretty young. And there was this one of the babies. There were two babies. One of the babies were just like sitting in a way. It kind of looked like it was hurt. And the Papa Nis was like, oh, I'm kind of worried. They were keeping watch. And then after a while, Mama Nis and Papa Nis realized that the mom and the other baby was gone. So he was like, oh no. And then so he looked at the one baby that looked kind of hurt. It was still there. And so Papa Nis was like, oh no, what do we do? What do we do? And then Mama Nis, I think, had to go somewhere. So it was only Papa Nis left over at the house. So Papa Nis kept on watching over the deer. So he was kind of worried now that the deer was hurt. And so Papa Nis started like slowly approaching it kind of to see. But then like he approached it in a way where like he was like, oh, if I approach it from the front door, it's gonna run towards the backyard where it's fenced off, so it's not gonna have anywhere to go and it's gonna panic. And so Papa Nis went out of his way to walk across the backyard to the other side to approach the baby deer. And so this is where the kind of nichijo moment starts happening. It's like Papa Nis opens the little fence door to go towards the deer, and the deer kind of like snaps his head and looks at him. And they make eye contact, and the eye contact doesn't break. And so Papa Nis took another step towards the deer, and the deer is still staring at him. And I have to say, the animals that live close to like residential areas, they kind of are not as afraid of humans, right? And Papa Nis was like, okay, this deer might be injured. I need to somehow take care of it somehow, or like, make sure it gets back to its family. And so he started slowly approaching without breaking eye contact. And then the deer kind of like, you know how animals do that little flinch? They're like, like it's getting ready to sprint out of there if something happens. So they're still making eye contact. And then as soon as the deer flinched, he was like, oh, the deer's not really hurt. It's just sitting there. So after all this time where he was worried that it was injured, it was just sitting there and it was just chilling. And so he was like, okay, I still can't let it stay in our yard because we can't have a deer living in our yard. So he took another step and the deer flinched a little more, like 70% ready to sprint out of there. And then Papa Nis finally made his last move and took another step. And then the baby deer kind of ran off. And Papa Nis was like, it's safe. Surely it knows its way back to its family. So he was like, okay, all good. And so he goes back into the house. He's like, okay, we're all good now. I can go about my day. Phew, it's not hurt. It's all good. It's gone. And then a couple hours later, that's when the funniest thing happens. He gets another alarm on his phone, and the motion triggered at the front door. He's just like, oh, could it be? And so he looks. And so that same deer literally was like right in front of the door. Well, not quite right in front, but like close enough. And then Papa Nis was like, look, it's staring straight into the camera. And so like I looked at it and it like turns its head and stares at the camera. and then the video cuts and I'm just like, Dad, what happened? It seems like an episode of Nichijou to me some reason. And he was like, "Yeah, this is so cool. I saved the video." And I was like, "Dad, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of an anime I watched." And I like pulled up the little screen. I pulled up the little clip of Nichijou with the principal and the deer. And then we all had a good laugh, and I'm just like, "Thank you for giving me something to talk about on stream." Yeah, that was the little story of Papa Niece and the deer.